On May 4, 2026, the WTA published its weekly rankings update, and buried inside the spreadsheet, between names that move up and names that move down, was a two-spot climb that told a story far more complicated than the number suggested. Alexandra Eala, the left-handed 21-year-old from the Philippines, rose to world number 42. 2 spots. From 44 to 42. On any other day, for any other player, that would barely register. But for Eala, arriving at that number on the eve of the Italian Open in Rome, those two positions represent something genuinely strange, a player who is simultaneously in the middle of a ranking slide and in the middle of getting better. Let me explain why that contradiction is real. Rewind to March 16th, Eala sat at world number 29. Career high. The highest any Filipino tennis player, man or woman, had ever been ranked. That number was the cumulative reward of a season that had started in Auckland with a semi-final run, accelerated through the Middle East with quarter-final appearances in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and peaked with a moment in Dubai that genuinely startled the tennis world, a 6-1, 7-6 demolition of Jasmine Paolini, the world number 8, in which Eala won 86% of her first serve points and finished with a 7-2 edge in winners. That was her third career victory over a top 10 player, after beating Iga Swiatek and Madison Keys during her breakthrough run at the 2025 Miami Open. At 20 years old, she had accumulated a collection of scalps that players twice her experience would envy. And then the math caught up. The WTA rankings operate on a 52-week rolling system. Every point you earned a year ago disappears when that same tournament comes around again. For Eala, the critical date was Miami. In 2025, she had ripped through the draw to reach the semifinals, collecting 390 points along the way. That run was the single event that launched her from anonymity into relevance. When the 2026 Miami Open began and those points fell off her total, the drop was immediate and steep. She went from 29 to the mid-40s almost overnight. It didn't matter that she had actually played well enough in Miami to reach the round of 16. She beat Laura Siegemund. She beat Magda Linette, because what she had to replace was a semi-final, and a round of 16 finish doesn't carry the same arithmetic. The loss that ended her Miami came against Karolina Muchova, and it was not close. 6-0, 6-2 in exactly 60 minutes. Muchova won 80% of points on both her first and second serve. Brad Gilbert, watching the match, posted a blunt assessment: Muchova all over Eala, 9-0. For someone of her height, and especially being lefty, needs to dramatically improve first and second serve. That single sentence captures the central tension of Eala's career right now, and it's the thing that makes her rise to 42 so interesting in context. Here is the problem Eala carries with her onto every court. She is, by most analytical measures, an exceptional ball striker. Her return game is elite. She reads serve direction early, she redirects pace with clean timing, and she constructs points from the baseline with a lefty's natural geometry that pulls opponents into uncomfortable positions. When she is receiving serve, she belongs in the top 30. When she is serving, she belongs somewhere considerably lower. Last season, Eala routinely clocked her first serve below 90 miles per hour. The WTA average sits around 105. Aryna Sabalenka hovers near 110. That gap is not cosmetic. A first serve at 90 miles per hour on the WTA Tour is essentially a rally ball. It gives the returner time to set up, time to dictate, time to be aggressive. Which means that every service game for Eala becomes a baseline rally from a neutral or slightly disadvantaged position. She holds serve not by winning free points, but by outplaying her opponent from the back of the court on every single point. Against players ranked outside the top 50, that's sustainable. Against players ranked inside the top 20, it's an invitation to get hit off the court. This is exactly what happened in her 3 most lopsided losses of the clay court swing. Fernandez beat her 6-1, 6-4 in Stuttgart. Mertens beat her 6-2, 6-1 in Madrid. In both matches, the pattern was identical. Eala's opponent broke serve early, built a cushion, and then served with enough quality to neutralize Eala's return game. When Eala can't generate free points on serve and can't get into return games because her opponent is serving well, she's stuck in a kind of strategic suffocation. There's nothing to grab onto. But, and this is the part that makes dismissing her a mistake, she has shown concrete improvement on the serve in 2026. Comparing her first-round match at last year's US Open to her Australian Open match in January, her win percentage on first serve climbed from 59% to 68%, and her second serve win rate went from 52 to 54. The first serve percentage actually dropped slightly, which is significant in a good way. It means she's going for more, taking risk, attempting to generate pace rather than just getting the ball in play. During the Dubai match against Paolini, she was clocked at speeds she had never consistently hit before. The motion looked different. The ball came off the racket with more pop. Reports from social media and training footage at the Rafa Nadal Academy showed serves reaching 105 miles per hour, right at the tour average for the first time in her career. The serve is changing. The question is whether it's changing fast enough to keep up with the competition she's now facing week after week. This brings us to what actually happened at the Madrid Open, because the scoreline of her loss to Mertens 2-6, 1-6. Obscures something worth noting. The day before that match, Eala beat Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova 6-3, 6-3 on clay. Pavlyuchenkova is 34 years old and well past her peak, yes, but she is a former Roland Garros semi-finalist who knows how to compete on the red dirt. Eala controlled that match from start to finish. She served adequately. She moved well. She managed the slower pace of clay without panicking. It was a professional, competent performance on a surface that has given her nothing but trouble. And then Mertens walked onto the court and did what elite clay court players do to opponents who can't hold serve. She sat on the return, she waited for short balls, and she punished everything in the strike zone. Mertens won 93% of her first serve points. Eala won 53%. That first serve differential tells you everything. Mertens could afford to be aggressive on return because she knew that even if she lost the return game, she'd hold serve comfortably. Eala couldn't afford the same gamble because every service game was a dogfight. The asymmetry compounded over 2 sets until the scoreline looked like a mismatch. It wasn't, exactly. It was a structural imbalance exploited by a player smart enough to see it immediately. Now consider what happens next. Eala enters the Italian Open at the Foro Italico in Rome ranked 42, carrying a 16-11 record on the season and $565,000 in prize money. She has only 20 ranking points to defend from last year's Italian Open and Roland Garros combined, because she lost in the first round of both events in 2025. This is the hidden arithmetic that makes the next 3 weeks so important. The points she shed from Miami are gone. The damage is absorbed. But the points she's defending through the rest of the clay season are almost non-existent. Meaning, virtually any win adds to her total. A second-round finish in Rome, and she's climbing. A third-round finish, and she's back near the mid-30s. A quarter-final, and she's threatening her career high again. Greg Ruzetsky, the former world number 4, made exactly this point on his podcast after Madrid. She's too good a player, she'll figure it out, he said. If you look at the losses she's taking, Fernandez pushed Rybakina all the way. So the losses aren't bad losses. It's sometimes the scorelines that are the problem, and this is part of the learning experience. Ruzetsky also pointed to something less obvious. She's gonna get stronger physically. She's gonna get more tactically astute. She's gonna start hitting the ball harder. That last part matters. Eala is 21. Female tennis players typically reach peak physical strength between 23 and 26. She is literally not yet the player she will become, and some of the weaknesses that currently get exposed against top 20 opponents are partially products of physical development that hasn't finished. The Italian Open is a 96-player draw at the WTA 1000 level, meaning the field is deep and the points are significant. Sabalenka, Rybakina, Goff, and Swiatek headline the entry list. Eala's first-round opponent was still to be determined at the time of the draw ceremony, but the structure of a 96-draw tournament means she'll likely face a qualifier or a player ranked in the 50-80 range in the opening round. Her recent history at this tournament is thin, that first-round loss to Marta Kostyuk last year, so there's no comfort of past success to draw on. Just the raw challenge of competing on outdoor Roman clay in late spring, with the temperature and the surface conspiring to slow the ball down even further than the indoor courts in Stuttgart or the altitude-assisted courts in Madrid. Clay exposes Eala's serve more than any other surface. On hard courts, pace travels through the court, and even a modest serve can skid enough to keep the returner honest. On clay, the ball sits up. It loses speed. A 90-mile-per-hour serve on clay becomes an 80-mile-per-hour ball by the time it crosses the baseline, and the returner has an extra fraction of a second to set up. That fraction is the difference between a neutral rally and an immediately defensive one. Eala knows this. Her team at the Rafa Nadal Academy, where she trains on clay courts year-round, has been working specifically on this transition. Instagram footage from her training blocks between tournaments showed repetitive serve sessions, the kind of grinding mechanical work that doesn't produce viral clips but does, over months, produce structural change in a player's motion. There's another dimension to Eala's Rome entry worth discussing, her doubles ranking. After partnering with Zeynep Sönmez at the Madrid Open, where they beat Chan Haoqing and Fanny Stoller before losing to the elite pairing of Siniakova and Townsend, Eala reached a career-high doubles ranking of 88. This isn't incidental to her singles development. Doubles rewards net skills, volley technique, and the ability to finish points without waiting for an error. These are precisely the weapons that could relieve pressure on Eala's serve in singles, because if she can close points faster, stepping in on short returns, taking the ball earlier, moving forward rather than absorbing from 6 feet behind the baseline, she doesn't need the serve to do all the work. The doubles improvement suggests she's actively building those patterns. What makes Eala's 2026 season genuinely interesting to analyze, rather than just follow as a fan narrative, is the coexistence of alarming losses and legitimate growth. The Machova match was 6-0, 6-2. The Mertens match was 6-2, 6-1. Those are the kind of scorelines that make casual observers question whether a player belongs at this level. But the Paolini match was 6-1, 7-6. Eala won that, against a player ranked 30-plus spots above her, on a WTA 1000 stage, while serving better than she ever had. The Yastremska match at Indian Wells went 7-5, 4-6, 7-5, a nearly 3-hour fight that she won through sheer competitive stubbornness. The Ostapenko match in Linz went 4-6, 5-7, tight enough that a single break in either set would have flipped the result. The gap between Eala's best and worst performances in 2026 is wider than almost any other player in the top 50. That volatility is not random. It maps directly onto the serve. When the serve functions, when she gets enough first serves in, when she generates enough pace to keep the returner from teeing off, her game clicks because her return and rally game are already operating at a top 30 level. When the serve malfunctions, when percentages drop, when speeds dip, when double faults creep in, the entire structure collapses because there's no secondary mechanism to generate free points. This is actually a hopeful diagnosis, not a damning one. A player with multiple structural weaknesses is harder to fix. A player with one identifiable deficit and elite-level everything else is a renovation project with a clear blueprint. The serve is the renovation. The rest of the house is already built. Rome will matter for Eala not because of what it proves about her as a clay court player in some grand thematic sense, but because of the practical math. 20 points to defend. A deep field that will test her but also offer winnable early round matches. A surface that will make her serve vulnerable but also allow her return game to breathe, because clay slows opponent serves too, giving her more time to deploy the shot-making that has already beaten 3 top 10 players in 18 months. If she wins 2 matches, she gains ranking ground. If she wins 3, she's back inside the top 40. If she reaches a quarterfinal on Roman clay, she rewrites her own story on this surface in real time. The ranking says 42. The trajectory says something more complicated. A player who hit 29 and fell, who demolished Paolini and got demolished by Machova, who has won 16 matches and lost 11. who trains at one of the best clay court academies on earth, but still can't convert that training into consistent clay results, who hits a serve that is measurably faster than it was 12 months ago, but still measurably slower than it needs to be. All of those things are true at the same time. The Italian Open starts tomorrow. The draw is set. The clay is watered and rolled. And somewhere inside the Foro Italico, a left-handed player from Manila will walk onto the court carrying all of those contradictions with her, and the math will do what the math does. It will reward whatever happens on the court, not what happened before it, not what might happen after. Just this match. Just this week. And for a player whose ranking has fluctuated by 23 spots in 8 weeks, that kind of clean arithmetic might be exactly what she needs.